Thanks, everybody, and good morning. Welcome to our Community Services Committee meeting on October 4th, 2022. I'm now going to call on Julie Hale, Committee Clerk, to conduct our roll call.
Regional Chair Redmond.
Present.
Councillor Vranovic.
Present.
Councillor Jaworski.
Here.
Chair Clark.
Here.
Councillor Lorenz.
I'm here.
Councillor Jowett.
Here.
Councillor Erb. Councillor Nowak.
Present.
Councillor Kiefer. Councillor McGarry.
Present.
Councillor Armstrong.
Present.
Councillor Harris.
Present.
Councillor Shantz. Councillor Strickland.
Here.
Councillor Foxton.
Present.
Councillor Galloway.
Present.
Okay, thank you. I would like to acknowledge that the land on which we gather virtually today is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, and Neutral people. We acknowledge the enduring presence of the Indigenous people with whom we share this land today, their achievements, and their contributions to our community. I'm reflecting today on the fact in this statement of Indigenous people's enduring presence. When I was a child in elementary school in Kingston, I believed that Indigenous people existed only in history because that's what I was taught. I continue to be appalled that that was the education I received back then, and I'm glad that thanks to the insistence and resistance of Indigenous people today, that's not the education my grandchildren will receive. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? I see none. There are no presentations. I am going to go on to our delegation. We do have one delegation today. Today's delegation is participating in person, and I would like to remind the delegation of some of the guidelines for participation. When called upon, please feel free to make your way to the podium. We also ask that you be seated once your issue has been addressed. If you conduct yourself in any of the following manners, it will result in an immediate removal from the meeting: interrupting councillors, staff, or other delegations, derogatory statements about councillors, staff, or others, turning your camera on at inappropriate times, although our delegation day is in person, hate speech or defamatory comments. And one last reminder, please don't take offense if following your presentation there are no questions from council. This is council's time to really listen and reflect upon the opinions and ideas shared with us from our community members. So I'd like to invite John Gardner from Cambridge to the microphone, and John is going to speak on Robert Kerr Manor.
Thank you very much. And I'll try not to get into any hate speech or things that are bad.
We do give that prelude.
I imagine you do. I imagine you do. It's the nature of the business you're in. Now, I'm delegating today for my community's safety and sanity, for myself, the streets that surround Robert Kerr Manor. What brought me here today, and I've been dealing with Kellyanne and Amy at the Regional Housing for 2.5 years, trying to work with them to make our community safer and happier, not only for myself, but the residents of Robert Kerr Manor. And I'll let you know, my backyard faces on to Robert Kerr Manor. From my backyard to Robert Kerr Manor is about 20 feet. So I hear all the shenanigans that go on day and night. What actually brought me here today was a little girl trying to go to school and was accosted by one of the residents at Robert Kerr Manor. So terrified she wouldn't go past him until I asked her, "Are you okay? Would you like me to take you to school?" And she said, "Would you please? He terrifies me." This is a long-term resident over at Robert Kerr Manor. Long-term, with a history of violence. I've talked to the police. I've talked to the community housing. I've talked to counselors. I've talked to many people over there. They all agree there's a huge issue, but nobody wants to step up and fix the issue. I've realized where the bottleneck is. The bottleneck is here. It's not the people that are trying to help our community, the workers, it's you people. You're stopping them from doing their job. You're stopping the police from putting people in jail that deserve to go to jail. That's what you're doing. The behavior that goes on in that place between the hours of 8 and 5 are fantastic. You've got all kinds of support there. 5:05, the music starts, the concerts start. The yelling, I'm going to kill you. The curse words that we all got to listen to, because again, they're in my backyard. I don't understand how you put an insane asylum in my backyard. It was an old age home. And you snuck them in, one at a time. You snuck them in, to the point now that they're over there, they've overloaded the place.
Mr. Gardner, I'm finding some of your statements to be a little bit inflammatory. Please avoid language like insane asylum and things like that.
Might be inflammatory, but I'm living it. I'm speaking truth to power here, as you guys say. So inflammatory or not, I don't care. This is what I got to deal with, and my neighbors have to deal with on a regular basis. Women don't go out nighttime because they're afraid. Children don't go play on the streets because they're afraid. You have a clientele over there. If it's not the drug dens, it's the mental issues. There's no counseling for me. There's no counseling for our community. You have a community engagement officer for the people at 143 Concession Street, not for the community. We're left there on our own devices. People threaten to kill each other. Meth going on over there. I had one gentleman set up a tent and bring a pool table to my backyard. A pool table. And the counselors went over and asked, "Are you okay?" I saw him inject the needles in his arms. And then I'm told by the police, he's a diabetic. He's not a diabetic. Call it what it is. He's an addict with a mental issue. And they shouldn't be there. They shouldn't be around people. You've got a society of people that are homeless there.
This isn't acceptable.
It's not acceptable.
To speak publicly, no. No, I mean, you're speaking about your neighbors, you're speaking about citizens that
I
we
didn't
have
mention
a
a
duty to
name.
respond to.
I didn't mention one name of a person in that facility.
That's not the
In that
point.
mental institute, I didn't
Okay,
mention
can
one
you please
name.
mute Mr. Kerr? Thank you.
Now, as for you people, you're police officers,
Mr.
the
Kerr,
regional housing, you're all in
Mr. Kerr,
silos.
you-
You don't talk to one another.
you have been warned. You have been warned. This is not acceptable. You can speak about the impacts on you and on the community about programs that are going on, but you have to speak respectfully about the people that are living.
Well, how could I word this then? Your departments don't talk to one another.
Yeah, he's muted, right?
How's that?
Yeah. Thank you.
called
Thank you for your
911.
delegation.
Many times.
And as you have already announced, you have been speaking with staff on this matter, and I know that that's the case because I spoke with staff too. So staff will follow up with you, and we'll continue to work on this with you.
But you're not working on the issue. The issue is the safety of my community. That's
We're gonna
the
move
issue.
on to the next item on the agenda.
Done.
No, we won't. I don't like being pushed around like you're pushing me around. This is
Your
why
mic is muted. We're not going to engage.
someone
any
has an
further.
issue, they want to talk to you as counselors and tell you what's going on in the real world, and you don't want to hear it. That, to me, that doesn't make sense.
Can I ask security to please remove the
Let me
delegation?
just, one other thing that I asked from Kellyanne, and this is working with the region, is a safety audit.
Sir, you're
I've
done.
asked for a safety audit, now I got to do freedom of information to get that audit.
Please respect.
I hope you people do something. Very quiet in here now, isn't it? Maybe I'll come back when I have the safety audit.
We're moving on to the consent agenda items. If you wish to remove an item from the consent agenda, please indicate so now, as we will not take questions on consent items unless items are requested to be moved to the regular agenda. The items listed on the consent agenda will be dealt with in one motion. Are there any items that you wish to have removed from the agenda?
Madam Chair, are our mics on? For the benefit of those on Zoom, can you please tell us what happened with respect to that delegation?
Sorry, I should have. Security has escorted the delegation from council chambers.
Was his mic turned off?
Yes.
So you could still hear him in council chambers, but we could not hear him on Zoom?
Yes, we could still hear him in council chambers.
And what was the reason for his removal?
Because he continued to use language that, in my opinion as chair, contravened the rules for delegations. In terms of being disrespectful towards the people who are living in the housing program that he talked about, and more broadly, in my opinion, to people who are living with addictions and mental health issues generally.
Well, Madam Chair, I respect your opinion, but we also have a duty to allow people to express their discomfort and displeasure, and he's obviously has a lived experience all of his own. Maybe his delivery was not the most polished, but if asked, I would have allowed him to continue to speak. He was not naming individuals individually. He was talking about his own experience, and obviously him and his neighbors are quite frustrated. And I think this is something, I've raised this in the past over the years. I think this is something that we need to look at in terms of community engagement, where we have these, domiciliary hostels, retirement homes, etc. They do have impacts on the neighbors, and we need to recognize that, and I think allow a little bit of latitude when someone comes in to express their displeasure. That's my view. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate that. I did give him 2 opportunities to have his feelings heard without using language that was disrespectful to the people he was speaking about, and he chose to continue to use that language. Councillor Foxton?
Thank you, Chair. And I understand it was a very difficult position for you to be in. But the issue doesn't really change. And that in some areas, the people living next to certain facilities feel threatened. And they do not have a recourse. Because police, again, don't change the situation. They say they have an excuse one way or another. And we as society, we have to start to face this. We have to start to really look at how we want our society to be. We totally understand the needs for these programs. We totally understand we want these people to have housing and everything else. But they also need to be, the residents surrounding them need to feel safe with them in their neighborhoods. And we have prime examples of situations where it's worked out well. Where it is not working out well, maybe we as a region need to look at a course of action that'll assist for the improvement of the neighborhoods. Because once we bring those that need housing or have drug addiction or whatever, together with the rest of society, we need the mutual respect. And to gain that mutual respect of each group, we need to create an environment where it is respectful.
I'm wondering whether, I see a couple of hands up, I'm wondering whether this would be a good time for staff to perhaps give a little bit of a summary on the work they are doing and the engagement they have had with Mr. Kerr, as well as with the neighbors of that particular project.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have been briefed on this particular location. It's a Waterloo Regional Housing location. As the delegate mentioned, he's been in contact with our staff for a significant amount of time. My colleague, Ms. Salerno, is here to answer any technical questions that I don't, but I can assure you that we've had many, many conversations and have addressed a number of issues. We've increased fences, we've increased lighting, we've cleaned up that site and continued to do a lot of work with those neighbors in that community. I can also acknowledge and respect that we just heard from somebody who's exceedingly frustrated. And my commitment to this council would be to go away and come back and report back in a manner that you would feel appropriate on additional next steps that we could take in this particular case. But it does pose the question and reframes the situation that while we speak here a lot, at least in my time here, about those currently experiencing chronic homelessness, we still have a significant challenge in this file in supporting people that we do find places to live, and acknowledging that a roof over somebody's head is not always sufficient, and those wraparound supports and services related to mental health and addictions are going to be really important, and the safety and security of the people we serve and the people who live and work close by is going to be priority. Thank you.
Councillor McGarry.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair, I do appreciate hearing from the Commissioner about this issue. Interestingly, the Robertford building is something that is a place that I know very well. Back in the early 90s, I was the visiting nurse in that facility, and I was also a care coordinator who helped to put services into some of those individuals, and I certainly understand the frustration and the fear of the surrounding residents. It has changed in the scope of who is being housed in this area. And I think this goes to an overall discussion that we're having throughout our communities in allowing, trying to find a roof over somebody's head, trying to put in enough support wraparound services to manage behaviors and health problems of addiction, but also in a manner that doesn't cause trauma to the surrounding neighbors and neighborhoods. And I think this is the real challenge throughout our community, certainly in Cambridge, certainly in the region, and across probably every municipality in Ontario right now. I don't have the solutions. However, what I can say is that when I was visiting some of my clients as a care coordinator for the LHIN in these buildings, sometimes somebody with an uncontrollable mental health issue or very active in their addictions would actually traumatize the surrounding seniors that were also residing on that particular floor or in that particular building. And I had to go out of my way to try and reach out again to the region at that time to try and rehouse these individuals in another Waterloo region housing home somewhere else that was more appropriate for that level. This speaks to having the issue way back in the 1990s of closing of mental health facilities. There are some individuals that really just cannot be supported adequately in our communities. And we've asked the provincial government in recent discussions, or I have, about looking at some kind of residential area, group home or some kind of residential area that has far more supports for those with mental health issues that really cannot be managed appropriately in the community. It's one thing for those of us that spend enormous amounts of time downtown Cambridge like I do, and I know a lot of the individuals that are adequately housed but do have mental health issues, and you can see that individual one day where they're polite and quiet and will, speak back to you when you say hello. And there's other days where that individual is howling, swearing, giving out racial slurs to everybody in their wake. And it's frightening for residents. It's frightening for those of us that realize this is in their head and they're likely not violent. But I really understand the fear of our community members. Children in particular are traumatized by this kind of behavior. And I don't know what the answer is, but I do know that we need the provincial government more adequately prepared to be able to address some of the individuals that I think our delegation was speaking about in that particular building, but it goes throughout. I was successful in speaking several times, as many of us were, at the Association of Municipality of Ontario conference this summer. We do have word that the Minister of Mental Health and Addictions, Minister Tobolo, is planning a visit to Cambridge and Waterloo region in the very near future. And these are types of discussions that I'm certainly going to have with them. because there are just some individuals that just are not appropriate in the type of settings that they're in. And, you know, I really do feel for the neighbors here. This is a very different building from the one I used to visit. And as I said, I wish I had more of the answers. I appreciate the commissioner's response. And I know that they're trying to adequately address some of these. But again, this needs a broader discussion at the provincial level to provide more supports for these individuals. Thank you.
Chair Redmond.
Thank you, Chair Clark. I just want to speak in defense and support of your decision. I don't think there's anybody that was listening to Mr. Gardner that didn't sense his frustration and empathize with what he is going through, and many neighbors, particularly poignant, was the little girl trying to go to school. However, I did see Kellyanne talking to him beforehand, and the two issues that I would ask staff to come back at a future date was Mr. Gardner talked about 8 to 5 as being fairly quiet, but after 5 not, recognizing that any kind of 24/7 wraparound services comes with a price tag. And I would just hearken back to an earlier meeting that we had that talked about some of our budget challenges now, but I would like to hear if that would resolve some of the issues. And the other thing that he referenced was a safety audit, and I don't know if that's something we do regularly. I don't know how we would do that, but those are 2 points that were my takeaways. So again, really recognize Mr. Gardner's frustration, but totally support you in continuing to provide decorum at council and respectful conversation of all people that live in Waterloo Region.
Mr. Sweeney, did you want to address those questions now or when staff come back? Okay. Councillor Verbanovich.
Thank you very much, Chair Clark. And I'm not, going to get into the debate around handling of it. You're in the chair, and I respect your role. It's not an easy one for anyone whenever they're in that role. I will, though, just add to the concerns that Councillor McGarry's raised, and I think it's just important for us to recognize as some of the concerns that we've heard about are not unlike concerns that, quite frankly, I hear on a regular basis from residents in the city of Kitchener as we deal with some of the issues of homelessness and the shelter system, and how we as an organization work with our partners delivering those services in terms of mitigating impacts on surrounding neighborhoods. And I just really want to echo something I've said before for staff and something that Councillor McGarry said today. It is absolutely key that become a key part of any of our implementation plans in terms of supporting these residential and service delivery facilities. Is to ensure that we support the residents of the community that need the support in the most caring and compassionate way possible, but with that we also show that same care and compassion to the surrounding neighborhoods that are often impacted. And I just met with a couple residents yesterday in my office, and there's certainly a feeling that doesn't always end up being the case, whether it's in the response they feel they get from Waterloo Regional Police when they call, whether it's the response they feel they get from our own staff. These are things that I think we really need to grapple with if we want to ensure that the community continues to show the level of care and compassion that they historically have. So I would really emphasize to our staff and to us collectively as council from a governance point of view that this needs to be a priority going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. I will just remind Council that coming up in a few minutes, we have a presentation on the Waterloo Region Housing Tenant and Community Engagement Strategy, which does speak about work that's been done over the last year or so on increasing health and safety in these communities, as well as the work that's coming. I'm not sure that it is a presentation. Is it just an information? Perhaps I'll give you an opportunity to make it a presentation. Councillor Galloway.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First off, I support your decision. Mr. Gardner made his point. We're discussing it and dealing with it. So he was heard, but after 2 warnings, he continued to his line of thought, and I think it was appropriate for you to cut him off. I guess what I wanted to say in regards to the situation that he and other neighbors are feeling is the same as Councillor McGarry and Councillor Babanovic has noted in so many other locations and circumstances around the community. You know, there are no good places for a lot of these kinds of placements. We just don't have tools in the toolbox to deal with some of these situations. And it harkens back to what I said earlier today in regards to some kind of a new deal with the province. I mean, we're good service providers, but we need the resources. And when we talk about the situation that Mr. Gardner is referring to, I mean, this is essentially a mental health problem. It appears, at least on the surface. There may be other root causes associated with the behavior, but you know, we're not the healthcare business. You know, the healthcare is a provincial responsibility. Now, we can provide some of those services, and the mental health services that are required for all the different, you know, people in our community who are homeless, who are in shelters, who live with mental health problems, even in normal accommodation, is something that just needs to be addressed by the province. And here's a good example of how the lack of health care, potentially in this particular situation, is affecting the well-being of a neighborhood. And we're doing the best we can with what we have available in terms of accommodation and wraparound services that we can make available to individuals. So I think it actually makes the point of the need for more involvement from the senior levels of government in dealing with these problems, which at the local level, as you saw with Mr. Gardner, he believes we can solve. Along with the police, which of course we do not direct here operationally at all. And have no say in of course, how they respond to these situations. So I think that you know, we have and all municipalities are dealing with this, a really serious crisis that we just don't seem to have the tools to deal with, and we're doing the best we can, but there are sometimes just no good solutions, it appears, for some of these situations, at least at the present time.
Councillor Strickland.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I really appreciate the discussion, and I guess, you know, in terms of the process, I guess you know, the point that I'm trying to make is that I understand it's difficult and I'm not in the room. But I found Mr. Gardner's comments uncomfortable, somewhat distasteful, but I think it's important to recognize we talk a lot about lived experience for homelessness. And we had a lot of delegations on here who have said many inflammatory remarks about region, about homeless providers, about Waterloo Regional Police. And we seem to, and I maybe should be very cautious here, but I think it's important for us to recognize that the homeless have lived experience, but so do citizens who interact with the homeless. And what we heard today was something that was expressed by residents that is echoed by many other residents as well. And so I'm glad to hear that we're looking at how we can engage community more proactively on this. I think it's important for us to do that and recognize that the unique challenges. And during my years on council, we've had several delegations from folks who live adjacent to group homes, shelters, domiciliary hostels, and there's all kinds of issues that we need to deal with in those kinds of instances. But it's really important for us to have ongoing dialogue and engagement with the community and proactively as possible deal with kinds of incidents that this resident is expressing here today. So I think it's important for us to understand, as much as we are supportive, as much as we're working very hard to deal with a very tricky issue, that homelessness and addiction has serious impacts on citizens and neighbors. And I think it's just important to give them voice. Thank you.
This not to belabor the issue of the removal of this delegation, but our code of conduct for delegations does say very clearly that hate speech and defamatory comments are not allowed. People with disabilities are protected under the human rights legislation, and hate speech against people with disabilities should not be accepted in this chamber.
Well, I would say it wasn't hate speech, but that's your call. I didn't see it as hate speech. Thank you.
Chair Redmond.
Thank you. And again, with apologies for protracting this, and I think Councillor Strickland makes a really good point that there were probably two experiences being had at the same time. One was you in the virtual viewing audience and one of us in the room. And I would just say that what I found disconcerting was actually that the delegation was challenging the chair, and it turned into a debate. And we don't debate with delegations, and they should not with council. It wasn't necessarily for me just what he was expressing, it was how he was expressing it. And I totally concur that council can listen to uncomfortable conversations, but they have to be done respectfully. And I was concerned with the fact that he wasn't adhering to cautions by the chair. So it was probably a different experience for those of us who were in real time, like in here in person.
One of the things that is going to be spoken about soon is some of the work that's being done around security audits, working with Waterloo Region Police Services, security camera audits, increased security staff presence, and I think that when we get to that part of the agenda, staff can speak to that in particular. It might be helpful. All right, I did ask the question about the consent agenda items. I won't read it again, but I will simply ask: are there any any items that you wish to have removed from the consent agenda? No, seeing none, we are going to go on to item 8.1.1, Waterloo Region Housing, Tenant, and Community. Oh, I'm sorry. Could I have all these blue things? Hey, Helen? We will now start a vote. Oh, so I need a motion to accept the consent agenda. And moved by Councillor Jowett, seconded by Councillor Foxton. All in favor, please use your buttons. Okay, thank you. I'll read a little more slowly. All right, now we are on to the Waterloo Region Housing, Tenant, and Community Engagement Strategy. And I'm sorry to ask you to make an unexpected presentation, but if you don't mind just giving us the highlights.
Yeah, certainly. Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you. Yes, the intention was to bring this forward for information. It's as you can see, there is a report in your package along with the actual strategy. But maybe I'll just take a minute, given the conversation that we've just had, to acknowledge a few things. The first is that we are the largest provider of affordable housing in this community. And what we experience on a day-to-day basis is significantly positive, and we have a significant number of staff who are dedicated to this work, to supporting the people who are working in Waterloo Regional Housing or living in Waterloo Regional Housing and the neighborhoods that surround these communities. I guess the other comment I would add is if we're going to solve challenges as a community, they need to be solved in the community. And the work that we are doing is focused on listening to the needs and concerns of the people who are living in Waterloo Regional Housing and the neighbors and those who are have adjacency to these units. And the plan that we've put forward, the plan that is in your package, as its number one pillar is safety and security. And it's also rooted in building community and building engagement. And so clearly, we heard from an individual today who's, again, obviously frustrated with some of the work, and we will continue to hear and listen and work and communicate with residents, no matter where they live and no matter what their experience, in a fully transparent and human way. And as issues arise, we will do everything we can, the powers that we have and the resources we have to address them. Again, ensuring that safety and security is primary in our work. And, I think the other thing too is a further acknowledgement that we can't have these conversations, in our view, in isolation from the systemic challenges we face in the significant challenges around mental health and addictions, and the intersectionality between the work we do as a municipality, the partners that we work with, and our health system is going to be paramount and primary in terms of moving us forward to ensure that the people that we are supporting get the supports they need, and the community that we all serve thrives and benefits from the work that we're doing. So I'm happy to answer any specific questions related to the strategy. Again, my colleague, Ms. Salerno, is here. If there's some technical questions I can't answer, but I do think it's an important point, given what we just heard today, to know that we have a very comprehensive strategy that is informed by the people we serve in the neighborhoods that we serve in. Thank you.
Thank you. And I see no questions. Okay, thank you. We're on to the regular agenda. And we have an information report on influenza, the previous season summary, and the plan for the coming flu season. I don't have a presentation, but staff are here if there are any questions. Councillor Erb.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In the report, I think it was around 180 pharmacies, I think, that are delivering the flu vaccine this coming season. And I was just wondering, how does that number compare to the number of pharmacies that were delivering the COVID vaccine? Do we see a different uptake in what is being given to the community with these two vaccines?
Councillor Herb, I think I might turn it over to David Aoki, our Director of Infectious Diseases. He might have a better recollection of the numbers than I will.
Thank you, Dr. Wong, and through you, Madam Chair, Councillor Erb. I don't have the exact numbers, but I can say that it's almost a near accurate reflection of the number of pharmacies that are providing COVID. There may be one or two that are choosing to provide COVID or not flu, or vice versa, that are choosing to provide flu but not COVID. But for the most part, our numbers are, I would estimate that we're probably between 175 and 185 that are providing COVID. So very similar to what's providing flu.
Okay, that's good information to know that they're providing the same service for both vaccines. Thank you.
I did have one question. I note that vaccine distribution generally is down, and I'm wondering whether you have any insights about why that might be.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Shuli, if you're okay, or Dr. Wong, if you're okay, I'll. So I think. I think for the group, I think that's a reflection of the fact that we haven't had any flu cases in the last 2 years because of the persistence of COVID and the measures that were taken with COVID, which masking, distancing, which occurred over the last two flu seasons to really mitigate flu. And
So, our flu numbers tend to reflect the previous year's flu activity. So when we have a bad flu season one year, the very next year we tend to see a lot of people getting the vaccine because they've probably experienced it and they're trying to prevent it. So because 2 years ago we had no flu cases, last year our distribution was anticipated to go down because people felt that flu has gone, kind of by the wayside. We did see in April of this year, as the measures started lifting in March with a lot of the provincial mandates for COVID, that we did see a return of flu. There wasn't a lot of cases, but there were some cases in April. And so we do anticipate that this year, with less restrictions in place, we will see a return of flu, and we've already had our first cases locally this year already. So we hope that will push people to receive their vaccine, and it is good timing. We are trying to offer the flu vaccine once it's available publicly or to the general public, along with our COVID boosters. Similar to what Councillor Erb said, we're glad pharmacies are offering both so that people can hopefully do it at the same time and get their shots together.
Thank you. Councillor Foxton?
Thank you, and through the chair. What a lesson we learned during COVID, when people wore masks and social distance and the flu season was almost non-existent. And you know what it taught me? Is now I have a cold, so I'm not going out. I wear a mask if I have to go out, and I'm going to not give it to any of you. And I hope other people will remember that if just wearing a mask if you have to go out may save our society a lot of illness. So I want to thank the Board of Health and you, Shane Wong, and your whole team, because that's a lesson I've learned. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Councillor Foxton, for modeling those great measures that we can all take.
Okay, I see no other questions or comments. We now have a verbal update on our homelessness interim response, and I believe Mr. Petitpierre and Mr. Sweeney are going to give that. I'm not sure in which order. Whoever starts talking first can go.
I'll take it from here. Sorry, I'm just going to put my video on. Sorry. Yes, thank you again through you, Madam Chair. Yes, Ryan's here with me as well to jump in. The first thing I want to acknowledge is to thank Regional Council and Committee for allowing us to provide verbal updates through this process on a file that is fast moving. And so I appreciate that consistently coming with verbal updates is a bit unique, and I just wanted to acknowledge and thank Council for allowing us to do that. I just want to provide a bit of a brief in terms of the work that's been done and what will be coming over the next week or so. As you are aware, a significant amount of work has gone into ensuring that we have added system beds to the shelter system. Obviously, we've achieved the goal of closing Edith McIntosh and opening another shelter without a gap in service. We have a new provider in the community that we inform Council about as well. And so that's a big win for us. Internally as a staff, we're organizing our staff efforts around the interim housing plan. It's an ambitious plan in a short period of time. And we're working very hard, and I want to thank our team for all the efforts, time and energy and expertise they put into this work. I think the two key things that I want to share with Council today is our ongoing commitment to ensure that this work is informed by those with lived experience in the communities we serve. We are actually this week, we'll be reaching out to residents currently living and residing in encampments to get their input and feedback on some of the work that we're doing, particularly as it relates to the existence and the desire to open what we're calling a hybrid encampment. That work is undergoing, as you can imagine. Site selection for that project is important, and equally important is the work to work with the community and understand the willingness, desire, and capacity of a partner to actually operate this particular program. Expressions of interest are out in the community for providers to put their hand up to acknowledge a desire to explore how we might partner in this work. And so that effort is underway, along with a number of conversations with community partners. The final piece I'd like to share is that we are and have been working very significantly, as you might imagine, on compiling a list of possible locations for the hybrid encampment. That work carries on this week, and our goal is to finish our assessment later this week or into this weekend, and we will be bringing something forward to council next Wednesday, and you will receive whatever package we land on ahead of time, so you'll have time to review it before we get to the open session next Wednesday. So I think I'll just end that there. Ryan, if you're on the call and if I've missed anything, please jump in, and if not, I will open it up for questions.
Are there any questions of staff on this? Councillor Rubanovich?
Thank you very much, and thanks, Mr. Sweeney, for the presentation today, and for the work that your team is doing. I know it's not easy work, but it's necessary work as we work to ensure, with winter coming, that that people have the support that they need. My questions to you is, we've moved now into the Schwaben Club. We know that there are, certainly I've already heard some concerns, as I'm sure staff and other members of regional council have, from the surrounding community. We've certainly heard them in downtown Kitchener with the two encampments as we wait for House of Friendship and other options to open up for people. And I really just looking for you to speak to the support that's going to come from the region for surrounding neighborhoods, either directly from the region through Waterloo Regional Service, through other partners that the region may partner with to support the neighborhoods. I mean, this really builds on the conversation we had on the last item. This is an area of concern amongst residents, a significant area of concern. And I do think it is something that we need to heighten our level of engagement on as we go forward. So I'm wondering if staff can speak to that, and perhaps even Chair Redmond can speak to it as chair of the Police Services Board in terms of things that she can take back to the police, recognizing that operational issues are not something that they have any direct influence on, just policy direction.
Thank you, Councillor Rubanovich. I'll address, I think, your points, maybe not in order, but specifically and at a broad level, any solutions that we bring forward, proposals that we bring forward, will be rooted in community engagement. Clearly, as I mentioned earlier, these are challenges within our community, and they need to be solved in our community, and all of community response is necessary. I can, as an example, the work that went into opening the new shelter on King Street included a neighborhood engagement plan. We have set up channels for people to provide their feedback, their concerns, which they have taken us up on in the last few days. We've had very, very productive meetings with our partners at the school board, with our partner, the Working Center, who operates this particular facilities. And, we try to, through the expertise of regional staff and partners, try to head off where we know we may have some concerns. And as things float to the surface, we are committed to addressing them in real time. And in fact, there's a meeting this afternoon related to the King Street shelter. The other thing that we did last week as well is we provided an opportunity for our partners at the school across the street to come over and tour the new shelter. The feedback was really positive, and I think there's a learning there about the power of encounter and how we can, as a community, come to seek to understand each other in different perspectives in a way that is very difficult to be done through email and Zoom calls, and can only really be done in person. And so I think there's an opportunity for us to continue to work on focus on the things that we know work, and also explore ways where we can build this work together in this plan as a community specifically. I will defer on any comments related to the police services. That's not that's something that falls into my portfolio. But certainly the piece I will end with, Councillor Rubanovich and Council, is as we bring forward potential sites for the hybrid encampment, I assure you that criteria that we are using to evaluate those include access to services for the people who would take us up on this offer, but also impact on surrounding neighborhoods, communities, and businesses. And so it will be, to the best of our ability, a holistic review, and they will come with pros and cons in terms of each site, and that will be comprehensive, and we'll do our best to take the needs of everybody impacted into consideration. So I hope that answers your question. If it didn't, I'm happy to take another one.
I'm not sure if Chair Redmond wants to add anything, and then I do have another question.
Sure.
My only comment would be to reflect that police services are in daily contact with representatives of the City of Cambridge, City of Waterloo, as well as the City of Kitchener, looking at a systemic system-wide approach. I think they're working towards clarity of messaging and action, and they are very much engaged. But you're quite right. These are operational decisions. I just know I've been privy to some of these conversations, and I know that they're ongoing.
Well, that's certainly good to hear, and I'll certainly be following up as a result of my meetings yesterday with some residents, with both Acting Chief Goodman and yourself around some of that stuff, Chair Redmond. But I guess I just really want to reiterate to you, Mr. Sweeney. I think the City of Kitchener has consistently demonstrated and indicated its willingness to and historically its willingness to be supported in terms of this important work as part of our regional family. But there are some significant concerns that the city has communicated, including managing the size of a particular operation. And I know that even our Chair Clark, has in the past said, 50 is sort of the sweet spot in terms of managing any of our facilities or thereabouts. So I think that needs to be factored in. Overall number of service-oriented facilities in a particular geographic area needs to be factored in by you and your team as you consider this. Really neighborhood impact. And, you heard, I think, Councillor McGarry and others speak to that issue is going to be important as we continue to deal with this going forward. So I just really want to emphasize that based on the communications that the city has provided to the region in that regard. From ourselves.
Thank you. I guess the one thing I failed to acknowledge in our process, but with be coming forward in a formal report of some sort to council before next Wednesday, is as asked and as committed to. Throughout this process, we have been in constant conversations with our peers and colleagues at the cities in terms of exploring potential locations, potential sites. And so we've done a significant amount of work to ensure that those voices have been part of this process, as imperfect as it is. And the other thing I just want to reiterate as well, because you alluded to it, all of these solutions are rooted in the idea that they will be operated by municipally funded partners as we hold the service system manager role in this. And so I just want to project again that, choosing the location, regardless of the service delivery that we're putting forward, is only half of the challenge. It's also ensuring that we have a provider who has the expertise and the willingness and the capacity and the resources to operate these well. So I just want to make sure that I reiterate that part of the equation again. Thank you.
Well, okay, thanks. And just to clarify for those who are listening, I think you meant regionally funded partners as opposed to municipally, because we don't want to create misunderstandings around where the funding for that lies.
The last thing I want to do is create misunderstanding.
Thanks, Mr. Sweeney.
Councillor McGarry.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you. And this may be part of the discussion with Mr. Sweeney, but also our communications. I think communicating all that we need to communicate to our public is fraught with difficulties. The mainstream media is not as prevalent in some people's way they get their news anymore. I would say that the City of Cambridge generally tends to have closed private Facebook groups of thousands of members, and when rumors get circulated around there, or misinformation or even accurate information, there's no way to either counter it or to be able to put out accurate facts, or even put out an area where people can engage with the process, through the tools that we've set up at the region in order to engage the community. And I'm just wondering if there's some kind of way that some of the communication that the region is putting out around engagement and what we're trying to do, and also the fact that we would love the public's help to lobby our provincial government representatives in our area to have the appropriate funding for all things that we're dealing with right now in social services. But would there be an opportunity potentially to reach out to some of the bigger Facebook group sites administrators and ask to actually put in some of the information that we're sharing with the public? As I said, it would be more of a public service or whatever is going to mainstream media, only because I don't see any other way to adequately communicate this, especially in Cambridge, which tends to almost exclusively get information through closed Facebook sites. I know it's a tricky area. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McGarry. As maybe one of the only humans left that does not have a Facebook account, I'll have to defer to somebody else on that. And I've also tried to stay off social media since taking this job too. But I do take your feedback. A couple of points, as you know, there is a smaller encampment currently at 150 Main. As of sometime this week, I'm sorry I don't have the date, we're doing a letter drop to all neighbors who live within a certain radius. We did the same thing with respect to the new King Street shelter. So we're taking advantage of the mediums that we have. We have the Engage Waterloo Region website, and we're also talking about what more can we do. And I realize I might sound like a broken record today with the comment that these are community-based challenges, and they're going to need to be required to be solved in the community, and they can't be solved in isolation. They can't be solved by one level of government. They can't be solved with one pocket of funding, and they can't be solved, when we are working against or across purposes with the community that we're trying to serve. And so we will continuously do our best to get better at community engagement and recognize that people receive their information in very different ways, and we'll try to reach people where they're at, and also make sure that there's a platform for people to reach us in a way that's meaningful and responsive.
Thank you. Excellent answer.
I don't see any other questions. I do have one, or more of an invitation, I suppose. One of the things that I have been asked a number of times by the public as well as by the media is what is a managed encampment, and how is it different from the encampments that are taking up a lot of our attention these days? And one of the things that strikes me is what we read in the news yesterday about the number of unaccompanied children that are staying at or visiting the encampments. children as young as 11, and again, unaccompanied with no parents overseeing them. And my assumption is that a managed encampment would not tolerate that sort of thing. But I wonder if you can take a minute just to clarify for people who may be listening about how you see a managed encampment differing from 100 Vic or Roos Island or 150 Main or any of the other dozens of encampments that we do know are around the community.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and again through you. I will say that for me, the best way to understand the difference between what we currently have with encampments across this community and a managed encampment is that a managed environment would be one that would have professional staff, outreach staff, there all the time. There would be rules of engagement. It would be part of the system, so there would be expectations and outcomes around flow. This is not an environment as we currently envision it, which would be static and permanent. In fact, it's intentional that these are interim solutions. Interim both for the people accessing them and interim as solutions themselves. And so when we have environments like we have right now, while there is a significant amount of work by our partners and our own regional staff to engage with people currently residing in encampments, that is not managed. That is, we are working with as best we can, and we'll consistently put forth that the environments that we're currently dealing with are unsafe. And I would suggest that the story yesterday about the children that are frequenting this particular location should cause concern and pause for everybody during this conversation. It worries me. I'm worried about the health and well-being of the people who are currently living in these encampments. And our goal would be to find solutions that work. And so that would involve an operator, a provider, whether an existing provider or a combination of existing providers willing to staff. So imagine, I guess the easiest way to frame it is it would look like supportive housing, but the units in which people would live might look a little bit different. We've tried to stay away from, there'll be tents, there'll be small homes, there'll be mobile trailers, because we just don't know yet. It might look different from year 1 to year 2, but the key is there'll be professional staff there constantly. There will be rules of engagement, and we will work this particular solution as part of the system. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you. Chair Redmond.
Thank you, Chair Clark. Just in addition, I am certainly not a housing and homelessness expert by any means, but I would have to tell you, I think everybody is deeply, deeply concerned about children underage being particularly at 100 Victoria Street. But I would also underscore that it is one of the reasons why I am convinced that taking court action is really necessary, because these are not safe places. And we understand that. And I would also just like the public to know that the agencies in the community who are charged with the responsibility of children and their welfare underage are acting. So nobody is turning a blind eye to this. Once it's known, Family and Children's Services do go in. I know they've had the support of WRPS as well. So people are not indifferent to this issue. It's just an ongoing issue. And again, I would just underscore the encampments are the least safe place for people to be. And when we know that, we have to continue to move forward to make sure that we can offer them a safer place to be.
Councillor Erb.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I think, we need to keep remembering, and Mr. Sweeney reminded of this earlier, the overarching issue in all of this, whether we're referring back to the gentleman from Cambridge who is concerned about the behavior around his property, if we're going to have a new managed site, is staffing. We're hearing that the people that are currently providing the services are having trouble attracting staff. People are tired, they're burned out. We've been very fortunate to create or find a new service provider. But if we're going to increase the facilities, if the expectation is going to be that we provide more support services in our existing sites, council has to recognize that if we don't have the staff, we're not going to be able to respond. And so that's a major concern, I think, that we have, that's going to be a reality when we decide what we're going to be able to provide to the community, that we can staff them adequately.
Thank you, Council. I don't see any other questions or comments. We have a Council Committee tracking list in the package, which is received for information. Is there any other business? Seeing, oh, Councillor Galloway? No, he's just waving. I think he's telling me we're going to take a 5-minute break before planning and works. Our next Community and Social Services Committee meeting is November 8th, and we will start a vote to adjourn the meeting. Moved by Councillor Galloway, seconded by Councillor Novak. All in favor? Carried. 5 minutes, everybody. Don't go far.